right. Here we go. Always have to fluff the hair. How is everybody?
Pretty good.
Good.
It's a nice fall windy day.
Yes, it totally is. And it sounds like from the weather report that I heard, it's going to get quite blustery this afternoon. So, or later this evening. So I told my husband, we need to bring in all the patio chairs because we have these patio chairs sitting out there. It's, underneath the cover, but they get blown all over. So
I'm worried about all of my beautiful Halloween decorations out there.
oh yeah. Yeah, Halloween decorations. I still need to get a pumpkin. My neighbors have all these ghosts and stuff. It's really cool. But we haven't done anything yet. So, but we'll get there. Also got to get some candy. Cool.
I hope we have lots of visitors because I've got lots of candy. And if it's left over, I will eat it.
Yeah, I know. I know. I always make sure to get stuff I like. Because there's nothing worse than being stuck with a whole bunch of leftovers of candy that you just aren't fond of. So
We never have leftovers, and I've actually had to send my husband out to the store to get more. Because like the last time that, pre-COVID, all that stuff, we were taking a count and we stopped counting at 300.
oh my gosh, that's a
Good
lot.
grief.
That's a lot. This is it's our second Halloween in this new house. And last year, I think that we were up at the cabin, so we weren't around town, and it was COVID. So I'm not sure what our usual traffic rate is going to be, but I have a feeling there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood. So I have a feeling we're going to get some good traffic. I always like seeing their costumes. So that's fun. Cool. So it's a little bit after 1. We'll give people a few more minutes. Today's guest speaker said she might drop in early and just kind of eavesdrop on the first hour. So hopefully Tricia will be joining us soon. And so just curious, what are you guys' thoughts about the business plan matrix assignment that was due yesterday?
I have no clue if I did what you were looking for, but I filled it out.
Good. Well, I think that the whole point is just to kind of get you to think in terms of, kind of like what each of those sections would be. It's kind of one of those things where, there's no right answer. It's just kind of a tool to kind of like get you to start considering some of those factors and stuff. So today we're going to be talking about clients, how to find them, how to manage them, how to, basically, best practices and stuff. So we'll be talking a lot about that. And one of the things I just wanted to be sure and mention is the fact that even if you're never a freelancer, even if you always are working in-house or at an agency or, as part of a team, you still have clients. Your clients so when I worked at TriMet, I was part of the creative services department. Our clients very often were in the marketing department because they would come to us and say, oh, we need to have, this brochure worked up, or we need to add this to the website, or we need to have, a sign to put on the outside of the bus, things like that. So in that case, they were our clients. Sometimes my client was my boss. because she was asking me to do a particular thing. You know, sometimes your client is your boss's boss, which, you know, makes it even that much more important that you should be able, you know, do a good job on it. And then sometimes our clients were members of the public. So, you know, if there is a group that was, you know, advocating for, you know, student bus passes or something, and they wanted us to work on various things to promote various programs, then we'd be working directly with them. So even though at that time I was not going out and, you know, selling the product, I wasn't, you know, working directly with, you know, outside entities and stuff for the most part. But I had a ton of clients, and they really ranged from, you know, both people that were coworkers, people who worked above me, people who worked kind of parallel, the programmers. So, you know, the programmers, when they were working on a particular web project, you know, they'd say, okay, so we need to have this page designed to look like this, and this is what it's going to do. So we're all going to have clients, you know, every single one of you. And even if you don't end up pursuing web design or development, if you kind of go into, you know, your work, whatever it is, thinking more in terms of, you know, a client, building a client relationship. You know, sometimes it's a client coworker relationship, but so basically a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today will apply to, you know, all sorts of situations. So let's see, anything else I wanted to mention about that particular? Oh, that's pretty much it. Since then, I've had, you know, started off, actually, my first freelance clients were people that I worked with at TriMet. So, you know, just kind of coworkers that knew, like, oh, you do design work, you can make a web page, you know, can you help me with this project? And one of my first full-time clients, and actually I worked with her for 10 years, was one of the legal secretaries who was starting a side job, you know, second career as a jazz singer in nightclubs. And I may have mentioned her in the past, but yeah, she was, you know, going to start doing jazz, you know, work. So she needed posters. She needed, you know, a website. She needed, you know, various things and stuff. So I, you know, basically I started off by doing little projects for her and, you know, then some of my other coworkers and stuff. So, all right. So I think everybody's here. And why don't I start sharing my screen and we can get started on Canvas. Here, practices. All right, week 5, client management. I forgot about these slides. Let's take a look at the slides. I actually created these slides. Okay. So working with clients. Yes, they're all, you know, basically, you know, this is kind of really, now I remember these slides. So it's like really kind of the basics of how to find clients, how to work with clients, all that kind of stuff. So first of all, finding the target market. figuring out where, what you're going to focus on, where your clients have needs already. In my case, I decided that I was going to focus on, small businesses just getting started and artists and musicians, because I already had a musician client and I like to work with creative people. And part of my business plan has always been that I have different sets of rates. So the artist and musician gets the lowest rate. The nonprofit gets a kind of a medium rate, slightly above that, not as much as a regular business. And then my highest rate is for business getting started. So sell possibilities. Yes, this is one of the things that when you're talking to people and you're talking about what they're looking for and stuff, they might have a specific idea in mind. It's like, oh, I just need a website that's going to do this. But the potential, since you've been studying this for a while, that's part of your expertise. So knowing what the possibilities are and communicating that to people is, part of the conversation. So seeing possibilities and sharing them with your potential client will definitely both broaden their horizons, broaden your horizons. Okay, establishing trust. That is part of what the client interviews. When you're first working with a client, they need to be able to trust you. You need to be able to trust them. So for them to be able to trust you, they need to know, A, that you know what you're doing, B, examples of your previous work, C, if you have, anybody you've worked with in the past who can give you a recommendation, testimonial, that kind of thing. That all really helps. But, and then also, establishing trust by listening to them, finding out what it is that they think they want, and using that to understand, kind of like make sure that you understand what they want and understand that they may have other needs they're not expressing because they don't know about them yet. So demonstrating your expertise in, by talking about the possibilities, which was the last slide, can really help. Right. Yes, selling your strengths. This is always so hard to do, especially when you're first getting started. Talking about, kind of like, oh, what are the things that I'm good at? Or, what are the skills I'm trying to sell? And it seems so weird to think about selling yourself. Kind of like going out there and telling people, hey, I'm great because I'm doing this, especially when you don't feel very confident and you're just getting started. But it's really important to, kind of figure out what are the things that you really have to offer. And, make sure that you mention them. Make sure when you're building your portfolio website, it talks about your strengths. If you're really good at coding and not so good at design, that's perfectly fine. So you can say, hey, I can solve those programming problems, excuse me, for you, and really get things to work really well. If you're more of a designer, say, hey, I can provide you some really great visual design options that will, just make your brand pop and really make your business memorable. And you don't need to mention that you're not that great a coder. You don't need to mention you're not that great a designer. Talk about the things that you're good at. Okay. And then discover what's missing. some of that is going to happen after the initial conversation that you have, with your client interview. And some of this, definitely this is going to happen as a result of research. Because if it's missing, it's not something they're going to tell you. And if it's missing, it's not something you're already going to know about. So this is where research, doing a little bit of research, finding out what others in the industry are doing, and, kind of like, maybe there's a new social media avenue that's perfect for them and they haven't, utilized it yet. Or, they have classes and they want to put a website up about classes, but they don't want to sell tickets or have registration. That would be kind of a thing. It's like, oh, this is something that's missing. All right, and be a problem solver. One of the best pieces of work advice that I heard at a conference and shared with my own kids as they were going out and joining the job market is to be a problem solver. Find solutions. Don't be a whiner. Don't talk about, oh, this doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and it's like, this really sucks. Find out how can you make it better. You might not be able to solve things entirely, but you can perhaps have changes that are going to make things better. So always be find solutions. And people really appreciate it as clients if you find solutions for them. Okay, determine the destination. So make sure you know where you're headed. What is the end goal? And it's the end goal, not just your end goal as a designer or developer, but the end goal. What is it that the client really wants? And sure, they may say, yes, what I want is a website. But really, if you can tie that to a direct result, like, okay, what if this website can improve, your online business, sell 20% more products by a website redesign, or, have an increase in walk-in sales because people have heard about you, or so many more mentions of your brand online. What are the actual goals that are quantifiable that make a difference in their business, as opposed to kind of like, oh, we're just here to get you a website and then we'll give it to you and walk away. Communicating clearly. This is always one of the key skills of working with clients. I forget which one of our speakers was talking. Oh, it was last week. Andrea was talking about how after she has a meeting with a client, she sends an email and basically itemizes, these are the things that we talked about. These are the next steps. This is what we expect to happen. And this is the deadline that we set. That is such a great habit. I've got to say, I'm better about it sometimes than others, but it is something that I try to do. And for me, one of the tools of communication that I find so critical is confirming all of the, if there's any kind of changes or feedback or whatever, that it's recorded somehow. So I do much better if you give me feedback via an email. So you can specifically say, oh, okay, I'll send you an email with, here's a link to the project. Or I've been working on these maps recently. So it's like, here's the map PDF. And my main client has the woman who's the boss of the department. Actually, she's the boss of the entire agency. And then the woman who's in charge of map production, whatever. And the woman who's the head loves to pick up the phone and call and have these long conversations. We need to have a talk about this. And then I try and take good notes. But inevitably, a week later, I go back and I look and I was like, what does this note mean? So, clearly, if I was following up on, the tip last week to go ahead and send a follow-up email to document it, that would totally have solved that problem. So, and also figuring out kind of like some clients really do a lot by text and phone, and they don't email. I still email them with, confirmation with notices and stuff, because it's a legal record. And I've had at least 2 situations in my career, the last 10 years, where there have been either some kind of a lawsuit, or in the case of one of my other clients, he died and there was discussion in settling his estate as to whether or not his wife had been part of his business. And they had been estranged, but she was claiming that she was half owner of the business yet. So my records of all the communications for and about the website clearly showed that she never had any influence or any conversation or any interest in her business, or the website was never mentioned on the website, all that stuff. So my records actually made a big difference. And it was because I had email, and, it wasn't because of our phone conversations, because, of course, those are out the window. So communication is important. After you've figured out what it is, what the real goal is, and you communicated, then it's time to dive in and really figure out kind of like, what is involved in this particular problem. If you're redesigning their brand, kind of like, really do research as to kind of like other similar brands and who are their competition and what do the colors mean. And, if you're using particular symbols, kind of like what does a fleur-de-lis really indicate and stuff like that. So really do the research and, know what you're talking about. This is always good advice, going above and beyond expectations. If you can get a reputation of adding a little bit extra to, what clients expected you to have to give them, that's going to go a long way in building your own reputation. They're going to share positive experiences about working with you. They're going to be more likely to refer. It's always nice when people say, hey, I shared your name with somebody I know who's looking for a web designer because you did such a great job and really, just found solutions for me. So, whenever you can, and it's in the budget, that's the other thing, is that you've got a little bit of, room there. Definitely, do the very best that you always can. Expect course corrections. Yes, there will be feedback that comes back that says, this wasn't what I wanted, or you'll end up saying, oh, our marketing department has totally changed, our messaging on this. So, going to have to go back and replace all of that copy. Or, we decided to rewrite this and things like that. Or we've decided to add on this extra feature. So we're going to be talking a little bit about feature creep and how to manage that later today. But there will be, you know, bumps along the way. It's just part of the process. And, you know, don't get flustered if, you know, you get some unexpected feedback that makes you feel like, oh, what, they just dumped all over the stuff I did. Well, yeah, sometimes that will happen, but it doesn't mean that you can't succeed. All right, so managing your time. This is pretty critical. So one way I manage my time is I, you know, like block out time on my calendar to do different tasks. I use a time tracker, which Harvest is the time tracker that I use. There are a lot of other ones that you know, people use, but it makes billing so much easier, and it makes estimates easier because I know how much time a certain, you know, task will take. Building an e-commerce store with, you know, 10 products, you know, I can figure out, oh, I did that in the past, and that time it took me 20 hours, things like that. So managing your time is really important. Checking in with your clients regularly is, you know, super important. So just kind of like, hey, you know, built that site for you, you know, 6 months ago, how's it been working? Are there any updates that need to happen? Or even during the development process, you know, letting people know, it's like, okay, I was going to try and get this task done by this Friday, but it's going to take me a little bit more time. So, you know, letting people know what's going on is, excuse me, way better than, you know, kind of like being 3 days late without any warning. So, oh, excuse me, just about to say. Also checking in regularly if they said they were going to give you content by, you know, the next Monday, and Monday comes, just checking in, saying hi, you know, I know that we had planned to have the content ready, of just wondering how progress is going. And, you know, if it's not all available right now, maybe, you know, you can give me some of it, the stuff that's ready. So just, you know, once again, it's all about communication there. Testing on all devices. That is important. And one of the actual questions that I like to ask clients when I do the initial client interview is I ask them what type of, you know, platform they usually use to look at their website. So if they're looking at their website on, you know, their laptop or their tablet, find out what browser and find out what phone they have. And, you know, because when you're looking at the site at the end and you want to make sure that it's working, you want to be able to make sure that you're looking at the boss's brand of cell phone. There was one client I had a couple years ago that at the office, everybody was using, I think, Chrome on a PC, and that was easy for me to test. But then the boss had like a Motorola Razr and used Internet Explorer or something on his, you know, on his phone. I was like, and things totally looked wacky. But of course, how many people are actually using that particular phone and browser combination? Probably less than 1%. So normally it wouldn't be a huge factor I would, you know, worry about solving, except for the fact that it was the boss and they were the ones who were, you know, paying me. So paying attention to what they're using is really pretty critical. So yes, doing a beta test and proofreading. So before you do a site launch, make sure that you do the beta test. You have other people with other devices look at it, and don't just rely on your own eyes for proofreading. I say this for from lots of experience. Especially when I was doing print design, graphic design, I found that I just could not see typos or text errors once I looked at a print piece 2 or 3 times, because I'd be looking for the, the visual design, the visual layout, making sure everything's, lined up and the colors are correct, all that kind of stuff. And I actually stopped seeing the text. So yeah, I think our speaker last week talked about actually reading text aloud to yourself, and that really helps. But if, and certainly using things like Grammarly can always help. And, we have these infernal spell checkers all the time, but spell checkers aren't going to find words that are wrong, or words that are, what we call homophones. They sound like the same word, like bite and bite, or, that kind of stuff. So if you can have a real person proofread it, and especially make sure that the client has before you show it to the client, but always make sure that they have proofread what they send you as content. It just cuts down on fixes later on. All right, so yes, many memories on this one. Anyways, moving the site to your destination is, lots of times you're doing site development, it will be either in a staging, platform. Sometimes you can actually use I think it's an app called Local that will set up a WordPress and a staging server on your laptop. But so after you've done the beta test, you've proofread, you've tested on all the devices, then you move it to the new destination and then repoint the domain name. So this is usually done at where the domain name is registered. So the domain registrar. And there's a series of steps that they have you go through to unlock the domain name and repoint it, stuff like that. But it's pretty darn simple. And, it takes about 5 minutes to do. And then after you repoint the domain name, it takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 days for the domain name to resolve, because it has to reach all of the servers around the entire world. So that takes a little while. Yes, and documenting the site process. So that's one of the things that I think is a particular strength that, my business offers. Lots of times after people, have a website built for them, they upload the site, they repoint the domain name, and they're like, okay, fine, goodbye. Let us know when you want anything changed. So one of the things that I try and close this really quick. So one of the things that I do is I actually build a little how to use your website booklet, and then do a hour and a half, very intro WordPress kind of training course, just to kind of explain to people, this is how your website works. This is how you can make changes to it. And probably 90% of the time, people still call me up to have changes done. But those that really are interested in maintaining their own website, they can do it themselves. And it gives them, a feeling of, power, control. They can, actually do things. And then when they want to add new features to their website, they're going to call me, because I, am the one that kind of got them started. Something else I was going to make. Oh, one of the other purposes about doing the website documentation that I do for clients is the fact that it's very useful to me too. So if there's a website that I built, 2 years ago, I can guarantee you, I do not remember what the plugins were that I put in there, all the various processes for it. What was the last change that I'd done, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't stay in my mind. I don't have that detailed memory. So if by having the website guide, a little booklet, it documents exactly kind of like, oh, okay, this is, how you add an event to the calendar, or this is what happens when an appointment is made, those kind of things. So yeah, so the website documentation is really useful both for you and for anybody that should come after you. And it's just, it's a good habit to have documentation. Those of you who are coders know that having descriptive comments in your CSS or your PHP is really great when you, kind of like come back to it 6 months later and it's like, oh, what was this style for? Like, oh, this tells me that this is the style for the H1 on this particular page, or, the nav menu on mobile or something like that. Cool. All right, so let's go back to this one. I'd forgotten all about these slides. So, but not too bad. They seem to work. Did I have a date on them? Didn't see a date. Anyways. All right, so I just kind of wanted to do a little bit of brainstorming here with you guys. And this is what they call Padlet. So in your canvas, you should be able to just kind of like double click on this and make a post. So I'd just like to hear from you guys what you think, what are attributes that make a great client? What are, what is it that you'd really like to see in a client? I'm gonna open this up a little bit. So just open this up in your canvas, and if you need, I could let me clipboard, and then I can put it back in Zoom. Let me put it in the chat. There's the chat. There's the chat. Okay. So if you don't have Canvas open, I just put the link in the chat. And, I'd like to hear at least one idea from everybody. Oh, yes, clear business model. That's a good one. Yes, because if somebody doesn't really have an idea, like they're trying to do, yeah, that's really frustrating.
You shouldn't have to help them define their business while you're building their website.
Yes. And, that's also partly what, like what business plans are. Yes, exactly. Somebody who knows what they want. Trust your expertise. These are all great, you guys. Communication, somebody who can communicate clearly. I love these. Content. Oh, yes. Where the content go? I've got to get the start of that one. Because so many times you get clients, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like, we want to do this and we know exactly what we want. We're going to give you the content. Then when you get around to the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to, build your site now. like, oh, well, we're still working on it, or we have to do a photo shoot, or, you know, we haven't decided what our marketing plan. Yes, understanding your target market is really important. And collaboration, that's for sure. Trust your expertise. Who is a team player and does not stress you out while you work, but understands you're just trying to create and works with you. Yes, very good. You want to give everybody 50 stars. That's really important. I hate it when people nag you when you're trying to get stuff done and they keep interrupting you. And it's like, I just need a couple hours. Just let me communicate and give feedback. Yes. Understand target audience. And it's amazing how many people don't understand their target audience. They think that it's really, you know, one section, but then, you know, you dive into it more and it's like, wow. Yes, able to get a hold of easily. Yes, I'm gonna definitely add some there. And you guys can add stars too. So the importance of collaboration. And all of these are good. So I'm starring them. And a good listener. Oh, yes. Yes, a good listener is really important. So, because if, you know, you explain things to them, you know, why something is or isn't going to work, and they totally ignore you, that is so frustrating. And a clear business model. Yes, I think that was the first one. Very cool.
Thinking about that idea of not having content before you're wanting to hire someone to build your site. And imagine there's a certain type of folks who are building a startup who, despite hiring a freelancer, are kind of expecting you to just join their team and just hang on with them until they have something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like, oh, sure, hey, let's, you know. And they expect you to do all this, you know, hanging out while they brainstorm and figure out what they're doing. Yeah, that sucks. Cool. All right. This is actually a really good list here. So I'm going to move on to the next thing, but thank you for all this input. I think that you guys are pretty much spot on. Oh, this is basically, so now we can see all the results. So that's kind of cool. Actually put it up there on 2 ways. All right, so you actually, and I know that I think I assigned these first 2 chapters earlier, but I didn't really have any exercises based on this. So one of your pieces of homework is going to be reading Design as a Job. And the chapters are super short, even if you're not, you know, crazy about reading. It's well written and it's really, you know, it's so spot on. So those 3 chapters. And here, this is, see, I was watching some of it. The client is not your enemy. This, I found this last year and I thought it was just really useful. The guy's name is Chris Doe, I think. And he is talking about WordCamp Los Angeles. And it's about a little over half an hour long, but it's really worth the watch. So I strongly suggest that you guys, you know, take a little bit of time and get what you can out of it. And this, Chris Martin, as I mentioned to you guys last week, he's going to be our speaker next week or the week after. Anyways, they just did this great, he did a great podcast about finding and choosing clients. And so he talks about ways to actually find them and 5 signs your client relationship will be good or bad. And he actually has some great links here too. So as I mentioned last week, this podcast is really a good one to kind of have on your subscription list. He's frequently talks to various, people, and you can tell this one is from 2017, and he's not interviewing anybody. This is one of his monologues. Doing on time, we've got about 10 minutes. I've got to say, you guys, I was getting so annoyed with all of the ads on Forbes and some of the other sites, but Forbes just seemed particularly bad. So I actually installed an ad blocker yesterday, and it just made it so much easier to read stuff on their website because it's not being, popped up and popped over and all this other stuff. But they had some great tips. 7 ways to identify your ideal client. So look at your current client base. Who are the people that you've worked with in the past and you seem to have a good fit with, and try and find more people like that. Consider their current habits. Are they people who are really on Instagram all the time? Are they, people who only do desktop? Identifying their goals, identifying their fears. Yes, figuring out what is it that actually makes them nervous? What are the things they're most worried about? And how they make their buying decisions. Are they somebody that has to go and get 3 bids from contractors whenever they do anything, getting a shelf put up in the kitchen or a new light fixture, or they just somebody who's like, oh, I found the handyman I like to work with, I'm just going to call them. So, and who would you like to work with? Sometimes, it's good to stretch a little bit and figure out, it's like, oh, okay, so I've done a little bit of this kind of work in the past. Would I like to? For example, I had created a website for the Cowlitz tribe when they were seeking tribal recognition so they could open up ALNA. And after that, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe other Indian tribes would be, good potential type of client. And then I can show them an example of what I've done. And what is it that they need? So both what do they think they need? And then from your perspective, using your expertise, what is it that you think? So sometimes you have to convince them. All right, good. I'm glad we didn't run out of time before we got to this page. So let's open this up in a new one. This is, as he mentioned, you bought my book and read all the way to page 18, where I promised you a screener for ferreting out what you like, whether you're talking to the right clients or not. So basically, here's an example of the questions that they use when they're interviewing potential clients at Mule Design, which was Mike's design agency. So as you can see, they're pretty detailed. What is the primary business and structure of your business organization? Summarize the project. Is this a redesign of something that exists or designing something new? So all of these kind of like questions get to a specific detail or aspect of the project. I kind of have a similar questionnaire sheet that I use when I'm interviewing clients, and I always used to print out on paper, bring it, and I'd write down the answers when I was interviewing people. And it was really handy to me because then I didn't forget anything. You know, I wouldn't get home later on and say, oh, but I forgot to ask them about, you know, accessibility, or I forgot to ask them about, did they have any, you know, forms or functions or whatever. Having a written list of questions that you use every single time is so helpful. And it also kind of, you know, helps you present a little bit more as a professional. So in this case, if you were doing this via, you know, Zoom, you might not write it down by hand, but if you're interviewing a new client via Zoom, definitely record it. Use some way, and if you just want to have a face-to-face conversation, record it with your phone. Let them know you're recording it. But if you're a good note taker, go ahead and, you know, take notes by hand. I think that that's all great. But I thought that these list of questions right here, I thought were really good. So how important is each of these? A change in company strategy, rebranding, new image, look and feel. Is that super important or is that not important? How much engineering, back-end development, programming, you know, are they looking for? Improving key metrics. So kind of like, oh, we need to make sure that we've improved our website traffic by 50%. What are the metrics that they're looking at? What is the content strategy? Who's going to be doing the writing? Understanding who the audience is or who the organization is. So that's really important. Getting it done as fast as possible or getting it done as inexpensively as possible. And of course, when I heard these two, it's like the third part of the iron triangle, as Rob was talking about a couple weeks ago. You know, you can do it fast, you can do it cheap, or you can do it well. You know, you can do it fast and well, but it's not going to be cheap. You can do it inexpensively and well, but it's not going to be fast.
You're always missing one.
Yeah, so those triangle, you know, it's there. How do you make it different from the competition? You know, how do you, is reaching a new audience really important? Better demonstrate the value, or are they correcting misconceptions? Is this a marketing campaign or a brand redesign or website that is countering something negative that happened recently in the media? That's important to know. Working relationship communication with your design partner. Is this something that's super important? Well, I think it's super important, but some people, you know, think that it's like, oh, as long as you keep me posted, that's fine. And who are your audience, your target markets, your users? So one of the things that Mike actually talks about too in the book is he talks about ethics and how to decide if a project is right for you ethically. Is, you know, what are they trying to accomplish? And does it align with your own core values? Which I think is actually really an important factor. And it's something that lots of times gets glossed over. So it's up to you to be true to your own values and know what those values are, those personal values. Okay. So looks like we're just about time to take a little bit of break. So this 12 tips about managing client expectations you can't afford to miss. I just pull those up. I think these are all really, really good. So be transparent, honest, realistic expectations. Always sign a contract. Do not start work before you've at least signed a contract. And even if it's just a really, really, really basic agreement saying, yes, I'm going to build a website for you, for X amount of dollars and it will have this many pages and this, that, and the other thing. But contracts are really helpful. And, you know, you hope you don't ever have to worry about them once you've signed them. But if the client decides, oh, well, I'm sorry, I really don't like what you're doing, so let's stop all work on this project right now and call it a day. If you covered that in your contract, you're in a lot better position than if, you know, you haven't covered it in the contract and all of a sudden they owe you $800 and for work you've already done. So making sure to have that kind of stuff and clear deliverables. Well, that's part of the contract. That's part of the contract. And let's see, don't be afraid to walk away. That's, you know, at a certain point, it's okay to say this isn't working out. You know, you're expecting this, I'm expecting that. So again, that should be covered in the contract, but you always, always, always have that option. You are not committed to, you know, sticking with this client forever if they're treating you badly. Relationships, and let's see, what's the next one? All right, writing assignment. So with that, let's take a break. I'm going to stop sharing. We'll take a break and we'll come back at 2:01 and be ready for Tricia. Okay, so see you guys in 5 minutes.
Hey, Feline,
Hey,
how are you?
good.
So I can't screen share. I just wanted to give you a heads up to that so you could release that when it's time.
Okay, yes, I will do that. I'm trying to find you in that.
I am not a good Zoom user. I'm a Google Hangouts
I
user.
know.
So I thought I'd give you a heads up in case there was a bit of whatever you need to do to make that happen.
Yeah. Why am I not seeing you on the screen?
Oh, it's Kevin Getch because I'm logged into his account. I had a Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay. I was like, and you look, actually, that looks a lot like one of my students. So I was like, what? Okay, so Kevin Getz, yes, you are now the co-host, so you'll be able to see screen share.
Perfect.
Yeah, I kept looking for your name there and I was like, what?
Yes.
So I was just kind of looking back to see which classes you took. So social media and WordPress were the two classes classes that we had together, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, that's been a while. That was my first year of teaching.
Nice. Was it your first year? No, it wasn't your first year.
I'm pretty sure. No, it was my second year.
I was going to
20
say, I feel like you had been there a year before, or
Yeah, 2015 had been my first.
a quarter,
And
whatever it is.
Yeah, the social media class was the first one that I taught.
Okay.
Let me turn my video back on. So,
Perfect.
no.
I have 3 screens, so you're over here, my camera's here, and my presentation is here. So I'm doing this, that's why.
So you're at Web 4 now?
Yes.
Yes. How long have you been there?
About, let's see, it'll be 3 years in February.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. Good times. I love working there. It's probably my favorite job ever, and I've had a lot of them over the years.
Cool. That's so good. I'm so glad. And you know, I really love it too when students who have graduated from the program can come back and, you know, talk about, hey, I found my role out in the real world and am putting these skills to use. And, you know, so it just gives everybody more of an idea of where, you know,
Where you can go.
and where,
What you
you
can
know,
do.
especially different companies where the possibilities lie.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Awesome. Can you see my screen? Because when I share it, my big visual goes away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it. So, and I'm going to check. So 2:01. So we are ready to start back. So students, let me introduce Tricia Davis Payne, who is our afternoon speaker. And she is a graduate of the web design program.
Actually, I ended up getting a certificate at graphic design. I was going after both, like 2 classes shy of CTEC, 2 classes shy of an AA in graphic design. But yeah, it was all paid for through a grant. So I did what I could get done in that time.
Well, good. Anyways, and you actually had a lot of experience before that too, if I recall. So you're putting all of your skills to work and stuff. So thank you, Tricia, and welcome to our class. And so Tricia will be sharing managing clients' expectations, avoiding feature creep.
Oh, feature creep.
Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Payne. Thank you everyone for having me today. I am currently the Director of Accounts at Web 4. What that means is I run our account management, project management department. We have about 18 to 20 employees now. We just brought on 4 or 5 new people. We just added a part-time intern to our content team. We have been a marketing digital agency in the Vancouver, Washington area for about almost 11 years now. We started out working with local businesses, and to this day, we still do that here in the Portland, Vancouver metro area. And we even have a handful of clients, like 15 or so, that started out with us in the first 2 years of business. But we now work with agencies or companies all over the world. Several of our clients are global companies, huge companies. So my role is to manage what we consider our enterprise accounts, our larger clients. And then I have a handful of team members that report to me that handle all of our other marketing accounts at Web 4. So I'm going to get started with this presentation, give you a little bit of background on me. I actually graduated from USC Marshall School of Business back in '97, which is going to age me, and that's fine. I got my bachelor's degree there. And then I moved up to the Northwest and eventually got a certificate of completion, which I was just chatting with Payne about, in graphic design at Clark College. That was probably about 4 years ago. But I've been in the marketing agency world for over 7 years, worked for 2 different agencies, the current one being Web 4. I spent 3 or 4 years in the freelance world doing my own business in digital marketing and website development and design for clients. And I also spent 7 years as the director of marketing for a global e-commerce corporation. So I have a ton of experience from all angles. I've been, I've worked for the agencies that serve multiple clients. I have freelanced and worked directly one-on-one with businesses. And I've also been on the business side of the house, hiring agencies to do design work, web development work, marketing work, paid advertising, and all of that fun stuff, where I'm the one actually being sold to and contracting for those things. And there is one clear commonality between those three roles that I have played in the last 20-ish years. And that would be scope creep. So I don't care what environment you're operating in, you will experience this, and you will experience it a lot in the beginning because you learn through doing. But my objective today is to walk you through some of the things you can do to mitigate scope creep. Because what happens with scope creep is a number of things. Your projects are late. So you might say, I'll have something done in 45 days or 90 days, and 120 days later, you're still trying to get it done. You will give a price point or an hours estimate for a project. Say, this is going to take me 60 hours and I charge, whatever, $100 an hour. So it's a $6,000 project. And you will end up spending 120 hours. And it is now a very much more expensive and lower paying project than you anticipated. Either way, it costs money or time or both. And oftentimes it's both. So when we talk about client expectations or expectations in general, the dangerous path that we all cross is that we don't uncover when expectations are higher than your client can afford, or you haven't asked enough questions. You are not well enough informed about the project to actually deliver a solid product that's going to wow your client and make them call you again for future work or refer you to others for work, which is at the end of the day where your bread and butter lives. I mean, you can pay for marketing and you can do all those things, and I might be shooting myself in the foot a little bit here since marketing is my bread and butter. But at the end of the day, you will grow your business as a freelancer, or your position in an agency, or your position at a company faster and farther if you are informed about expectations. So one of the biggest things I recommend, and Feline touched on this earlier in the class I was listening in, is to ask questions. That is the most important part. It's the first thing you do. And then when you're done asking questions, ask more questions. So, what does that mean actually? So what I'm going to walk you through in this presentation primarily is the kinds of questions that I ask clients when I first meet them, and kind of uncover the why behind those questions. So you can have some understanding about what the intent is and what the context is behind those questions, because some might seem obvious, but they really aren't. So let's get into that. Obviously, there's some basic business information that you're going to collect. You're going to get the company name, when they were established, all that fun stuff, email address, business address, phone numbers, blah, blah, blah. The most important basic business information that you want to capture is how would they describe their business, an elevator pitch. So ask them to tell you what they do in 2 minutes or less. And the reason this is such an important question is because your whole objective, whether it's marketing or website, is to communicate that information in 8 seconds or less. So this is a website that we did for a client of ours. And there's less than, without counting the navigation, there's probably 10 to 15 words on this page. So you want to clearly communicate very quickly what the client does in a very short space of time. This is a film education company. They place you with directors and producers who are making movies today, who have won Emmys and Oscars, and you mentor with them to, break into the film industry. So in less than 2 minutes, they told us what they did. And in less than 8 seconds, we have to accomplish communicating that on a screen with just words and color, space, and CTAs, or calls to action, right? So once you get past who they are and what they do and why they do it in less than 2 minutes, you also want to know who they think their target audience is. So you want to ask basic questions, because when you're just starting out with a client, you don't have access to their analytics necessarily. You don't really know who they're targeting. You might have uncovered some ideas about that, but it's really important to investigate it with them, because they should, and if they don't, that can be an additional service that you offer them. They should understand who they're targeting, right? What's the age range of their audience? What is the gender? Is it male? Is it female? Is it a mixture? Is it one more than the other? For instance, the website I just showed you for film school trends about 70% male to 30% female. That's changing over time as more women break into the film industry, but currently that's their demographic space. What are the concerns, interests, pain points, points of view of their audience? So you can really hone in on how to capture them very quickly through a visual experience with the website, or language through marketing. And how should their audience perceive them? That's kind of flipping the switch on the audience demographics in a sense that, do they want their audience to see them as professional, trustworthy, knowledgeable, fun, affordable, expensive? It runs the gamut, and depending on the type of business they're in, you're going to get a lot of different answers. But understanding that starts to tie into the design elements, the language you use, the way you present information, images, CTAs to that audience as you start to begin to uncover what they're really trying to accomplish with you. So this is a Northwest Personal Training, and their idea when we investigated their business was that they wanted people to understand that they understood and were working towards the most important asset you have, which is your health. So here we have, less than, 7 words, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 words, clear CTAs, navigation that draws your eyes in with their branding. So really, what are they trying to accomplish with the emotions of the audience they're trying to attract? They're trying to bring users to the table that value their health and consider it one of the most important aspects of their life. When we talk about marketing, here's some of the questions that you're going to want to ask. And I should mention too, Feline, that I will send this as a PDF, so you guys don't have to write this stuff down. This will come to you in a PDF presentation so that you have access to these questions for however you might use them in your future careers.
Thank you.
But have you worked with a digital marketing agency before? You'd be surprised how important that question is. And here's why it's important. If they have worked with an agency, they're going to be used to the process you're going to put them through. So it's not going to be new to them. They're not going to be green with understanding the ins and outs of the process of web design or web marketing. But you're also going to uncover if they had bad experiences, right? So if you're asking that question and they go, yeah, we worked with so-and-so, we had a horrible experience, this is what happened, you're going to glean a lot of knowledge on how to work with that client in a way that doesn't strike them, doesn't rub them the wrong way. You're going to uncover even some pain points that might caution you to work with them going forward. Like Feline touched on at the end of her presentation, saying no is totally an acceptable answer. Walking away from a project is something you will do potentially. I've probably worked with over 100 clients, and I can name 2 that I wanted to fire. I wasn't in a position to fire them, but eventually the relationship went away. And so, it's okay to walk away when things aren't working out, because if you don't, it will cost you more time and money than it already has. So just know that yes is an answer, and so is no. They are equally balanced. And you will learn so much from that question. There's some other stuff here, like, do you have an internal marketing team or associate? It's good to know if they have resources, because those resources are going to be a part of the collaboration with you in making content happen, in understanding what kind of plugins they're going to want to use, in understanding their demographics. There's so many aspects of making sure you understand who their internal team is that might not be a part of those internal discussions. Maybe they have a social media person. Maybe they have other marketing partners they're paying for services that you should know about so you don't step on their toes, or could potentially take over their services if you offer better information and consulting in that area, right? All kinds of opportunity to uncover there. How would you know this project has been a success is another critical question to ask potential clients or clients you're looking to contract with, because how they define success, what their KPIs are most likely going to be different than what you think they are. So if you know how they're measuring success, you can groom your project to be aligned with that. If they're coming to you for a website and they say, we're looking to double the amount of traffic coming to our website. Well, that's a moment for pause, right? Because a website needs to have marketing on top of it to drive traffic to it. It needs other services to accomplish that objective. So there's lots of things you uncover through this investigation. Primary locations that you serve is critical. Other business locations, getting all of that data is really important, especially in the world of Google My Business and local SEO. And we're not going to really touch on marketing stuff, but if you know anything about, as a searcher yourself, you are primarily finding local answers to your problems from your phone, and Google My Business is providing that solution. So you want to uncover as much as you can about the areas they serve and the other locations that they have. You also want to ask the question, are there any specific keyword phrases that they would like to rank for when it comes to marketing? Because how they think people search and how people actually search can be two separate worlds. And if they have a real firm belief in something, we can make that happen. We can do that. But we can also teach them and guide them through data on understanding that environment. But you really want to uncover what they think they want before you start telling them what you think they should have. So these are critical to not only getting information, but building rapport with them, because you're telling them, I want to know about you before I start telling you what I think I know about you. You also want to investigate their competitors, even if it's just a website project. Understanding who their primary competitor is. If you're a bakery, then you have, let's say you make cupcakes. Your primary competitors are going to be other cupcake makers. There could be a bread maker down the street who's maybe a secondary competitor, but they're not your direct competitor. You want to uncover both. So this is another example of a website, and it kind of speaks to the idea of what are the keywords you're going after. This particular company is in Oregon. They sell forestry, crane, and construction equipment, as well as rentals all over the Northwest. And so you can see very clearly that construction equipment is one of their most competitive spaces. And the reason you can see that is because forestry equipment isn't in here, but that's what people search for. They don't search forestry. They search forestry equipment, crane equipment, and construction equipment. Now, if we wanted to overload this, we could put equipment everywhere, but you can clearly see if you're on the marketing side of the house that construction equipment is their most competitive space. So we tie into those words in the navigation, in the few words in the call out for their, kind of their tagline, if you will. And then we have hooks into those different features. So you have to think about those things. Even if you're not doing search engine optimization for that client, you could be. That could be something you do after the website is up and running. And if you think about that now, you can impress them very quickly later without having to do a lot of changes to their website or their language. So when we come to the website side of the house, when we're investigating a website project for a client, we want to understand what the major goals are for the website. It might seem obvious to us in the world of website production, right? We want them to call us. We want them to fill out a form. Maybe they're trying to build their social presence. Maybe that's a really important thing for them as a goal of the website. Maybe they are trying to communicate a very difficult business objective. Maybe what they do is complicated and they need a very simple way to communicate it to their audience. You don't know what their goals are until you ask them, and you will be surprised at the variety of answers you get when you ask that question. Some clients prefer to never have the phone ring, by the way. So they don't want their phone number on there, which is interesting. But you don't get to know that until you ask the question. And what would be the ideal call to action kind of ties into that, right? Do you want a phone call? Do you want a form filled? Do you want an email subscription for your marketing campaigns? Do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to, download a resource? There's a whole bunch of CTAs, calls to actions, that can be deployed on a website. So don't assume that you know what those are. Always ask. And what is motivating you or enabling you to do this project right now? Another important question, because it could be that they have a monetary resource, right? If they come to you on October 15th for a website project and they are looking to spend the $20,000 budget they have for that before the end of the year for tax reasons, that's important to uncover. Mainly because you have to deliver and bill for a product in that time frame. There's a variety of reasons that could be motivating them. So just asking that question helps you uncover pain points or reasoning behind that. Maybe they had a web developer that they were working with, the relationship fell apart. You can ask the question, well, what happened? So you can understand better how to work with them than that person did in the past. What are the 3 most important reasons you've decided on a new website? When we ask this question, we have a drop down of options, but you can really just ask this as an open-ended question. And it just kind of hones in on, if they have an existing website, it'll help you understand what's not working for them, in their opinion. If they don't have a website, then those are kind of obvious answers. But in this world, in today's age, they probably have something. They've got, at the bare minimum, some horrible GoDaddy template site or a Wix site, which could actually look good, by the way. But you've seen those like really cheap, do-it-yourself type websites are at the bare minimum what people are using today versus nothing. So it's rare that you'll run into somebody, unless they're an entrepreneur starting a business from scratch, then that might be the case. Another big one that often gets missed, even by the client, is asking if they have brand guidelines or a style guide that you can have access to. It helps inform you about how to use their brand, what colors to use, what fonts there are acceptable. Most clients that are smaller might not have this, but they'll at least have some assets to give you for their brand or logo, or their preferences around color. But if they do have it, you want to make sure you have that going into the design process. Otherwise, it'll cost you time to integrate that after the fact. The other big thing that no one really thinks about on either side of the fence until they start to place images is photography. And photography takes a while to get. You can use stock images, absolutely. There's plenty of free resources for that. We actually use that, and we're a huge digital marketing agency, but we also use paid royalty assets for our clients, but of course they pay for those. But if you ask that question up front before you get a month into the project, if they would like to have real photography, they can be thinking about that and capturing that now. You can start having that conversation now. If they have assets, great. But I will tell you from experience, 9 times out of 10, they have nothing. So you're going to be relying on stock photography, or maybe even popping out there with your nice phone that takes good pictures nowadays and snapping some pictures of the front of their storefront, maybe the inside of their business, maybe a team photo that doesn't have to be really professional, but can be nicely captured and casual. But definitely ask that question. And then what should your site convey visually? This is another important question, because there's hundreds of feelings you can get from imagery, right? Do you want bright and cheerful, corporate, financial, industrial? What are you looking for? This is a mobile grooming site for animals, for dogs primarily. And they wanted fun, they wanted casual, they wanted cute. And so that really informed, the fonts we used, the colors we used, The pictures that we're using, these bubbles actually float up on the screen. They're animated when you're on the site. And when you do a good job of uncovering what they want people to feel from the imagery and the experience they have with your website, you can really add some nice extra easy features to accomplish that. But you wouldn't otherwise know that if you don't have, if you haven't asked the question. This particular client loved what we did so much that they built wraps for their vans around it. These vans were just gray. They were nice looking new trucks, but they liked what we did so much. Those bubbles at the bottom, and that book now is actually deeper on that site. So if you go to roughroadsmobilegrooming.com and you scroll the site, you will see those bubbles at different areas of the website. And they pretty much took our website design and then wrapped their vans in them. So this is kind of an example of how your work can transcend the website if you do it the right way. Some more stuff on website, because there's a lot of questions to ask there. If they do have a current site, and most times they will, you want to ask them what's not working, what's not being achieved by the site. This is an opportunity to uncover potential add-ons, to direct them through consulting with ways to improve upon that with your knowledge. And then asking them, so people are coming to the new site for the first time, how do you want them to feel about your company? So that, that's kind of ties into the question we asked above, but in a different way. And there's no reason not to ask one question 3 different ways, because you will uncover so much information that will help inform your work. And that will save you time and money, by the way. So do it. The other thing is examples. I want to know what the websites look like from your competitors. Now, you might think you know who the competitors are, but some environments are very complicated and robust in terms of the competitive field. So you want to ask them who are their competitors, and then you want them to tell you who they think is doing it well and who isn't, and why, for both of those. So we actually have an online questionnaire form that our clients, potential clients, fill out after they contract with us. And sometimes they'll just put wishy-washy answers in here and they won't give us much information. We have a follow-up meeting to this questionnaire and we actually dig in deeper. So I will bring up their competitor's website and I will say to them, what is working here? What is not? And they will talk forever about it and give you tons of information, more than they're willing to type out in a online form or an email form, right? So make sure that you send them the information to think about ahead of time and maybe answer, but then also have a meeting where you walk through all of these questions with them. The other thing I always want to know is, what are 2 to 3 websites that you think are well designed? And they don't have to be in your industry or one of your competitors, because you'll uncover things that could be very expensive to actually implement, right? If they show you a website that has custom motion graphics or illustrations that took a lot of time and skill to produce, you can kind of walk them back with the reality of what it takes to implement something like that. And they won't have the expectation that they're going to get something like that without having that conversation. So make sure you investigate the competitors with them, what's good, what's bad, and then also have them come to the table with some websites that have nothing to do with their business, but have things that they like. And then how will you know this project has succeeded is another important question. And it kind of harkens back to the, how will what's the most important objective of the site, CTA, right? So if they say more phone calls, more form fills, more traffic, those will kind of cue you in to the things you need to do to accomplish success with this client. So this is just another example of a website. They wanted to showcase real people. This is a weight loss surgery company. They didn't want super skinny, really healthy people who were exercising and looked like, they were in perfect health, because that's not their client. That doesn't represent their demographic. So you want to be thinking about this as you uncover answers to these questions. Kind of rounding out my presentation here. I know I've only got a couple minutes, but this last 2 slides is really important. Define your scope of work and be very, very specific. How many design comps are you willing to do for this price point? and how many revisions. If you don't enumerate that, you will have clients asking you for 20 different iterations of something from a design perspective. So make sure you let them know this is what you're getting for this price. Number of pages, content requirements and deadlines, super important. Forms, how many fields are on the form, making sure you put in a CAPTCHA for security, getting their email address that those forms should route to. Uncovering all of this information up front is critical. What kind of plugins and integrations do you have to consider? Do they want social media feeds? Do they have a blog and they want a blog feed? Do they have an email marketing system set up with like MailChimp and you need to integrate that? Uncover all of these things through this process before you even get started. And you should also emphasize to them, once you deliver a price point and exactly what that scope looks like, that any item out of scope should be estimated. Don't say an extra page will cost this much dollars. No, because you don't know what they're going to want to put on that page. Maybe they want an integrated map. Maybe they want a different form. Maybe they want a photo gallery. Who knows? But you should say that all things outside of scope will be estimated and considered change orders or need to be signed off on. Think about ownership, domains, plugins, anything that costs money and is renewed should be owned by the client, not by you. Do not buy your client's domains. Don't ever do that. Okay, you will be in a world of trouble and so will they. Actually, they'll be in more trouble than you, but it's bad. Make sure they buy everything so that they get the renewal notice. They're the ones responsible if the domain goes down. You don't have to do anything if the relationship falls apart. Think about accessibility. Think about your calls to action. Think about analytics tools. Think about SEO. Record your conversations. Feline already touched on this, but super important. I put in a fireflies.ai link. They have a free service. They will record your calls no matter what, Zoom, Google Hangouts, doesn't matter what it is. It'll attach itself and automatically record the conversation and transcribe it, which is super awesome, by the way. There's a paid version too, but the free version is pretty awesome. So I would definitely do that. I'm not going to showcase this because I'm out of time, but I do want to say this one last thing with my one last minute before we go to Q&A. Don't tell them what amount of time your work will take. That is your knowledge, not theirs. Just give them a price for the work. You've already defined the work. It's probably going to take you longer than you think it's going to take in the beginning. But if it takes you half the time that you thought it does, it doesn't mean the project is worth half the price. So be very mindful of that. You have gone to school, you've paid tuition, you have software assets, you have skills and resources. So don't discount those things. You're valuable and you should own that. Tell them exactly what you will deliver, give them a price, have them sign a scope of work. On a content delivery basis, have them signature the space that tells them they've agreed to deliver content by this date. It's not because you want to be a jerk. It's because if that date comes up and they haven't delivered content, you can go back to that as a reason the project is behind. If you don't make them aware of it, make it their attention, they will forget about it and they will blame you for being 30 days behind, even though they haven't delivered content. So remember to do that. Also, change order policy, which I already touched on. Set expectations, communicate ideas, be the expert, and work for retention. That is your basis for success and growth when you're starting out in this business. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
That was a quick 30 minutes. That went by fast.
I know, did great. So, Joe, is your hand raised?
No, I was clapping.
Oh, you were clapping. I know. It's like sometimes I can't tell with those two icons. So, yeah, definitely.
I'm going to stop screen sharing so I
Oh,
can see comments.
you
Open
yeah.
to Q&A, Feline, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, definitely. Cyrus has his hand raised.
Yes. I was wondering, so if and when you do have to break ties with a client. It's supposedly ahead of schedule in a not so perfect situation. How like abruptly should that break be, and how much? I guess how much bridge burning is recommended.
Yeah, so it's never easy, right?
Mhm.
It's not going to be a lighthearted situation. Things are not working out. It's obvious on both sides when that happens. And that's why your contract is important, like Feline mentioned, because it protects you from two things. It lets the client know that you can leave and they can leave at any point in time in the contract, but that there's certain paid deliverables that are milestones that are met, right? There might be a down payment. There might be a second payment once design is approved, a third payment once the website is live, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself in that contract in case there's a situation like this. If you don't have a contract and they owe you $1,800, you can't go to court and get your money back. So to your point though, when this kind of situation happens, and it will, you want to have a face-to-face. You don't want it to be an email communication. You want to have a conversation that says, hey, I think we can both agree things aren't working out. At this stage of the contract, I have delivered this and you've paid for this. So these are your assets to use and go work with whoever you want to carry the project forward. It's never an easy conversation to have, but if it's going badly, if it's going sideways, you will save time, effort, and energy to end it before it gets worse, because it won't get better. I promise you.
Okay. If in a situation you might be seeing one of like a milestone coming up that you can reach in a couple weeks, even though you know you want to break off, would it be in bad faith to just work to that and then cut it there?
I mean, if you've put time into that milestone already, I don't think so. I mean, unless they come to the table and say, hey, we want to break ties,
Of course.
you're not doing anything but, trying to reach a hurdle and get paid for that hurdle and then break away. So it depends on the situation. Oftentimes when we start out in freelancing, we have friends and family that come to the table. So that gets even trickier. So another piece of advice, don't work with your friends or family.
Roger that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I might have a question. I don't know if you covered it already, but if I may go ahead, then what happens if you discover that your client got involved in a scandal, or you have reason to believe they're in a scandal?
That's actually happened. And you break ties with them. I mean, if they are involved in something that is going to have a negative, and I'm talking about serious stuff, right? Like crime, for instance. We did have a long-term client whose children accused them of horrible things, and it was in the newspapers. They were a prominent business owner in the area, and we cut ties with them. It just is what it is. We couldn't take on the negative light of being partnered with that kind of situation. So, that's why uncovering information about the people you're getting into business with is really super critical, and understanding who they are and where they came from, how they started their business, all super important things. And then it's up to you to decide what you get involved with. There's some very profitable but sketchy business models out there. Some people choose to do business in those environments and some people choose not to. So you have to know what your guide is to navigate that. And then if it's not lining up with that, there's no reason you shouldn't exit the situation. So you got to trust your gut on those things.
I see. Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I see your website?
My website?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a website for Tricia, but I work for Web4. So you can go to Web4, which is WEBFOR.com. We just launched a new website, and it was called Panda. Now we're in Red Panda. So our 2.0 is on the way. We reimagine ourselves constantly because the web is ever changing on a daily basis. So we are
Web4.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Web4.com.
Okay, I saw it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
Come on, you guys, don't you have any more? I know I particularly liked when you're talking about, you know, being able to say no and finding out, you know, actually working with the client and the interview process to look at the competitors.
Mhm.
Sit down and do that tour with them, you know, and get that gut reaction. I know for the most part, lots of times I'll ask people, send me a few web links and, you know, let me know what you like the look and feel of. And, you know, that's also a way of finding people's taste in design, kind of like what are the design styles that really appeals to them.
Mhm.
But I haven't actually taken them on a tour of their competitor sites before, and I think that that's really useful.
Yeah.
Start doing that.
Yeah, and it touches on expectations too, right? I've had several clients come to the table and say, you know, we want your small template, small business website package. And then we send them a questionnaire, and all of the examples they send us are very high-end custom websites.
Yeah.
So that's a really good time to have a reality check and help them understand.
Yes.
Well, that could be something you grow to, but
Yeah.
reality is you're looking for something more basic. So let's align the expectations right now, instead of, you know, not even uncovering that or thinking about it and then getting to the point where you deliver a product that they're like, well, this isn't what I was expecting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I also, one of the things that you mentioned that I know I have found to be really important is to be very, very specific about what they're getting. So it's kind of like, okay, if I'm giving you a basic, you know, 5-page site, it's going to include, you know, up to 10 images. It's going to include one form. It's going to have 2 rounds of review, and basically try and quantify everything as much as possible, including client meetings. So I know when I first started, I started off with a couple of projects, and I forgot to include any time for client meetings, and they were like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Basically, I ended up not getting paid for because that wasn't part of the contract. So yeah, all that stuff.
Yep.
These business nuts and bolts. I mean, it's a lot to think of, and it's very overwhelming when you get started. But you know, that's why we're doing this class.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you will make mistakes, but the more you know going into it, the less mistakes you're likely to make.
Yeah.
Or the less impactful those mistakes might be, because you'll hearken to these types of conversations where you go, oh, I forgot about that, but I remember hearing about it. Now I know why it's important.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't make sense to me at the time, but oh, that's why she kept talking about it. And when you see people, especially on some like Fiverr and stuff, that will, oh, we'll do a logo for you for $50 with unlimited revisions. What? You know, how is that going to make you any money? You know, so stuff like that. It's, you know, part of it just covering your butt and, you know, making sure that you are really businesslike.
Yeah.
Because yeah, cool. Well, does anybody else have any questions today?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Okay.
What are the differences between web design and web development?
Good question. So we actually approach design. We use Adobe XD to design all of our sites. So you get a wireframe, and then you get full color comps, as we call them. So you have images that are in place. You should have final content in there. All the buttons are colored, and the rollover states are interactive on an XD file. So you can really kind of showcase what the website's going to look like before it's built. So these are very static images of pages. They're not like, you can't, I mean, I guess you can click on navigation, but it's not like coded navigation. It's a link to another page that's designed, right? And then you take those design comps and you package them up for your developers who actually build the code. So we do almost 100% custom web, custom WordPress sites. We used to do templates. We don't do them too much anymore, only because they're actually more painful than custom websites are, if you have good development team that can build custom sites. So, obviously, if you don't have development skills, then templates are your best friend. Don't get me wrong, but so it depends. Like if you're in a template environment, then really you've already got a design to work with. You just need to make sure you're communicating to your client that they can't customize that, right? They can add the plugins and the features that are available with that template, right? So I've got a section that can have an image on the right and content on the left. And then I've got one that can have an image on the left and content on the right. And the client will come to you and say, what if we put an image to the left and the right and content in the middle? Well, that might not exist, and that's custom. And templates don't like to work that way. So that's why you gotta uncover expectations through this process. Where a custom environment is really free flowing. So you design the website from scratch using something like Adobe XD, and then your developers build it from there, make everything work from a code perspective.
All right, got it.
Great question. Okay, well, I think that, yeah, we're down to the last 5 minutes. So I'll let you go, Tricia, but thank you so much for coming. This was really, really useful information. And I think you did a great job of, summarizing all of the parts of the process. So
there's a lot.
It is a lot. It is
a lot to put in 30 minutes. So I will package this as a PDF and email it to you right after this. And then you can share that with the students so they have that information to refer back to.
Okay, cool. Good. So I'm going to talk about their assignment. So, and then we're going to be off in 5 minutes. So thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got just two assignments this week. The standard weekly writing assignment, and instead of having you go off and find information online, I'm going to ask you to write about chapters 2, 3, and 4 in Design as a Job. And if you don't have the book, I included links on the module page where you can read it, download it, and read it for free. So 2, 3, and 4. And then the next one is to write about Tricia Davis Payne's talk that she just gave us, and just review, some of the content that she had. I will make every effort to be sure and get that up within the next day. And my schedule is pretty free this afternoon, so hopefully I'll be able to get it done before this evening. With that, I will follow up on the grading. There's still grading that I need to get caught up on. But other than that, we will see you guys next week. I'm going to say, who's our speaker next week? Let me go back to the modules and see who we've got. Just a second. So yes, next week, content strategy, effective storytelling, and marketing yourself with Chris Martin. So that will be great. And then the following week will be Aaron Hockley. Those are all good. One of the things I really appreciate about our speaker schedule for this year is I tried to get people from all of the major web design, web development agencies in Vancouver, the Vancouver area. So you can have some connection with each of the different design agencies. So Web4 was one of the big ones. And we'll be talking to people from Gravitate and all that. So with that, I'm going to end the class. Ooh, a minute early. And thank you all for showing up. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm available on Slack, or use, the interactions, feature of Canvas. So with that, I will talk to you guys later.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
You're welcome. Bye-bye.